All right, we'll let anyone else who trickles in just join, but we'll go ahead and get started. Today, we'll walk through how AI project assistants can help you manage your projects within the Microsoft environment. I'm Charlene Cleargos, an account executive here, supporting our customers throughout their work management journey. And I also have on the call with me Neil Alcott, one of our senior solutions architects, who will be walking us through the demo portion of today's session. Just a quick look at today's agenda. We'll briefly cover some background on our work here at Marquee 360 and how we support and enhance the Planner tool. Then I'll pass it over to Neil for a deeper dive into Proji, our AI project agent, and the focus of today's session. We will have some time at the end for Q&A, but feel free to raise a hand or drop a question in the chat throughout. We will also be recording the session, so I'll send it out at the end in case you do miss anything. All right, some background on Marquee 360 for anyone who is new or unfamiliar to us. We are a Microsoft Gold partner for work management and M365 cloud solutions. And what that really means is we have been recognized by Microsoft as a trusted partner to work side by side with their team in supporting their customers throughout their Microsoft investment. We focus our work on the M365 applications such as Planner and Teams, as well as the Power Platform with things like Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI. Our founders are actually previous Microsoft employees and have been in the work management space for over 20 years. So they've seen many iteration of Microsoft project management tools. So everything from Project Server to Project Online, and more recently, Planner and the Power Platform, where Microsoft is shifting their focus. At a really high level, these are the main areas that we focus on. We spend a lot of time helping customers extend the Microsoft Work Management Platform, working closely with their product team to ensure our customers are receiving the most up-to-date technology and capabilities. We take a consultative approach to designing the right solutions for every team and support organizations through implementation, training, and ongoing support after go live. In addition to supporting the native Microsoft tools like Planner, we've taken years of experience and best practices to build solutions that fill gaps across the project management lifecycle. PPM 360s are pre-configured solution designed to extend Microsoft Planner, giving teams a place for project intake, resource management, risks and issue tracking, and interactive reporting all in one place, providing a more complete end-to-end project management experience on the Microsoft platform. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Neil to talk about Proji.
All right. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. So my name's Neil Alcott. I'm a senior solutions architect here at Marquee 360. So I'll be doing the demo today, and we'll be demoing Proji, which is our AI project assistant, which is basically an add-on to the PPM 360 solution that Charlene just described. So with the Proji, chatbot, essentially within PPM 360, you're going to see a side panel open up where you can have conversations, chats with the agent itself. But the agent is also set up with different types of capabilities, skills that would help a project manager in the day-to-day activities of managing their project. One of the nice things with Proji as well is if you have a particular process or anything else that you would want an agent to help facilitate, we can actually customize this for whatever that process might be. But it does include a lot of kind of out of the box skills that you could leverage. And we'll continue to add more and more to that. As you guys know, AI is the hot thing right now. So lots of things are changing with that. And as new capabilities come out, we'll continue to enhance Proji as well. All right. So with that, let me share my screen and I'll do a quick demo for you guys. Charlene, can you see my screen?
Yep, I can see it.
All right. So as Charlotte mentioned, our core product is PPM 360, which is a Microsoft Power Platform solution that adds a lot of capabilities to the core planner, scheduling, and task management capabilities that Microsoft provides. Obviously, I'm not going to do a full demo of PPM 360. We do that in other webinars and whatnot. But when we talk about Proji, it is an add-on to PPM 360. So I'm going to go down here to plans, and this is where I'll see all the projects, all the planner projects that I have access to. And in particular, for this webinar, I created a couple sample projects to show some of the capabilities of Proji. So I'm going to go into here and keyword search for one of those projects. So here I have a Marquee 360 project server migration project. So when I open up the project here in PPM 360, you can see we have a bunch of different tabs that organizes our project information. And some of this, in the context of Proji and the AI agent, some of this data I've already populated just so the AI agent will have more information, more knowledge, more context about the project that's currently open. So for example, if I go down here into project charter, you can see, this project has project description, a problem statement, objectives, what's in scope, what's out of scope, constraints, assumptions. So, and again, a lot of times, this probably came from a project request or your intake process, whatever it might be. But for the purpose of today's demo, we're using it so that the AI agent has some context, some knowledge about what this project is supposed to do, what its objectives are, what some of the constraints or assumptions might be, what's in scope, what's out of scope. All right. Now, for Proji itself, it also has context of all the other data, related to the project. So field values, the schedule, if you have risk issues, things logged as part of the project, it'll have access to that, and that'll all be part of the context. So as you're asking questions to it, it can go in and it can answer your questions for you. So to open Proji, up here on the toolbar, you'll see a Proji button. And then when I click on that, it'll then open up the chat window off to the side here. And as you can see, it knows the name of the project. And then some of those skills that I mentioned earlier, you can see you can start those off right here. We can also add custom skills depending on what your process is, what you might want it to do. But it's typical chatbot basically, right? So I can start asking questions about it, like, who is the business sponsor for our project? And then depending on the information that's already within the context of the project, it'll go ahead and query some of that information. My Power Apps have been running a little slow this morning, so it may take a minute before it warms up here. So here you can see it's Mia Reed, who's actually on the call as well. Hello, Mia. But you can see here, it queried basically this particular field. So you can do that with any of the fields. You can ask for information about it, ask about, description of the project objectives, all that kind of information. So I'm going to dive down into the different skills that we have here. So for this particular project, as I mentioned, we have a project charter. This project already has a project schedule as well. And some of the tasks on this particular schedule have already been updated, so we can kind of see what's been complete, what's not been complete, so forth and so on. So trying to simulate here, what would it be like if I use this in the middle of an active project, something that has been ongoing for maybe a few weeks or a couple months, what exactly can happen here? So with some of these different skills that we have, I'm going to walk through each one of these. So one is a schedule analysis. So when we run schedule analysis, in Proji, we have a set of different best practices, rules basically, where it's going to look at your schedule, look at the task, and then compare them to those different rules. And then any task that either violates that rule or maybe is not in compliance with that rule, it can then return what we call a schedule recommendation. Now, we do this as recommendations because we don't necessarily want Proji to go and just change your schedule without you knowing exactly, what it was changing or why it was changing it. So with this, it actually will write this to a log in the project called schedule recommendations. So you see right here. And then the PM, when they have time, they can go through these recommendations and either make corrections, maybe hold off on whatever that change might be, or maybe they'll just decide I don't really need to do that for this particular project, so they can just defer that particular recommendation. But the key thing here is it's not going and changing the schedule. Maybe down the road we'll add that capability with Proji, but because schedules are so important, we don't want it to just make a bunch of changes to your schedule without you knowing exactly what the implications are. So in the dialog here, you can see where it returned with a number of different recommendations. Basically, this is the particular task. What's the situation? So in this case, this task is overdue. It wasn't completed in time. And then it has a priority, either high, medium, low priority. And it has some description of exactly, what the issue is. So for this particular task, it's flagged because it's 57 days past due and hasn't been marked as complete. No progress has been shown on it. Pretty typical, kind of thing that you would see on a project that maybe the project manager is not doing a good job maintaining that project. All right, so I'm not going to go through all these, but you could either select all and then save them, which will write them to that particular log, or you could go through, if you just want to save some of these, you could just go through and select whichever ones you want to save, and then save those. So if I go here to schedule recommendations, now you'll see what task is it, when was it detected, so it was today, what's the recommendation, and then what's the issue type, so it's either overdue or that task wasn't started, severity, and then the recommendation status. So the recommendation status is really there for the project manager to just keep track of things that maybe they've evaluated and they took action on, or things that they still need to review or defer. So, and you can actually make this, I don't have it set up here in the demo environment, but this could be an editable grid where you could just change the status right here. Or in this case, I could open up this item and then, of course, it's opening the task. I didn't want to see the actual task. I want to see the recommendation. There you go. So here I can get a more detail of exactly what that recommendation is. And then down here, I could say it's still open, I've resolved that issue, or I'm dismissing that issue. And essentially, you would just go back to your project schedule, make those updates, and then maybe periodically run that schedule analysis. So again, on the back end of Proji, we do have a rule book for that schedule analysis where there's a bunch of different rules that's basically going through and checking your projects against that. We can provide those set of rules to you guys, and you could either decide if you want to disable some of them or maybe you want to add your own rules. We would have that capability, by customizing Proji. All right. So next thing we have is to check my email. So check my email basically will scan your email for any emails related to this project. That maybe there are action items, things that are being asked to be done in that particular email, and you want to add it to the action items log for the project. So to do the email scanning, it does ask for permissions to check your inbox. Now, if for security reasons you don't necessarily want the AI agent checking your inbox or your organization doesn't want this capability, we can turn this particular skill set off so nobody will have access to it. But basically here you have to grant it permissions to scan your emails. And then it's going to ask you how far back do you want to check. So if you were on vacation last week, maybe you just want to go back 1 week, or maybe this project's been on hold for a little while. You can also look at it 2 weeks, 1 month back. These can also be adjusted, the time frames, depending on what you're seeing. So I'm just going to I'll do 2 weeks. I say scan emails. Now, keep in mind, because this is a demo, we'll see what comes back. What it's looking for are emails that have certain keywords. So for example, it might be the customer name, it might be the name of the project. Different things like that is what it's looking for, and then it returns possible matches. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a 100% match, but I can go through here. I can kind of see, who is it being assigned to, what email did it come from, and then similar to what you saw with the schedule recommendations, I can go ahead and select, whichever ones I feel I want an action item created. And then depending on information that's in the email, it may try to assign this to the project manager or to a team member. It's basically reading who sent the email, who's being mentioned within the contents of the email. So I'm just going to go ahead and create those action items. And then over here on our action items log, you can see it then created those action items. If I want to open this up, I can get more details of exactly, what that information is, including what the source email was. All right. Again, the whole idea here is to save the PM some time. Instead of going through checking their email, creating action items, things like that separately, this is just an example where let the AI agent do that, let it return possible action items, and then you can pick and choose what you want to include. All right. So next skill we have here is performing a risk analysis. So again, the agent itself has full context of the project, including the project schedule. So when we tell it to go ahead and do a risk analysis here, it's basically looking at the scope of the project, the current state of the schedule, work that needs to be done, work that's been completed. And then it's going to come back and recommend certain risk that you may want to monitor going forward. So you can see here it outlined some different recommendations. And you can see it also categorized it. So some might be stakeholder category, some might be scope, some might be changes, resources, technical risk, so forth and so on. It's calculating the impact and the probability, when it would be due. It's probably looking at project schedule related to some of that. And then if we expand down here, it also gives you your mitigation and contingency planning. The whole idea here is identify risk, log them to the risk log, and then the PM can fine tune that or assign it to somebody else to then manage that particular risk. So in this case, similar to what you saw earlier, I could either do a select all, I can pick certain items and say I want to create those selected risk. It's basically going to log them to the risk log. Then it'll start showing up in your reporting, whether it's project stats reporting or portfolio reporting. And then you can start managing that information. So if I go to risk here, you can see it now logged those risks that I identified. It's calculated what the exposure of that particular risk is. And if I want, I can drill down into any of these, opens up the risk form, and now I can see more details about that particular risk. All right. Next example is what if you want to create documentation, related to this particular project. And we actually have kind of two different examples of this, either generating a business case or generating, your weekly, bi-weekly status report. So let's take a look at the business case first. Excuse me. So if I go back into here, you'll see we have a business case tab here with a rich text field. It's currently empty, but that's where the business case would be stored. And as I showed you earlier, we go to some of the other tabs, such as Project Charter. It has those fields already filled out. The agent knows about that information. It's within the context of this particular project. So if we ask it to build a business case, it's going to use this information. It might use other information, that's within the project to generate that business case. And this is one example with a business case. You can apply this to other types of processes or documentation that you may want it to generate. So I'm just going to tell it to go ahead and create business case. Now keep in mind, it's not just looking at this information, but based on the AI model, it may be looking at other information that that particular model's been trained on to then go ahead and create the documentation. In this case, I'm set up using a couple different open AI models for this, but you could have your own models or, Anthropic, other providers as well that you would want to leverage that for. So after the business case is generated, it outputs it here in the chat, so you can scroll through, read that information. So you can see here, it's saying Marquee 360 is embarking on a project online to project server migration, yada, yada, yada. So it's gathering a lot of that information that was in the project charter, and then some information from the schedule and whatnot. Now, when this is done, I could say, update our business case field on the project, or just business case field. It's going to basically write what it wrote up and write it back to the actual project itself. Now, this is an example where we're telling it write it to a field that happens to be a rich text field, so all the formatting and everything else will be retained. When we do the status report skill, you could also have it create a PowerPoint deck. You could have it create a Word document. It really depends on exactly what your process might be. So if I go back to the business case field here, now you can see that that field's been populated with the business case. It has the formatting, bulleted list, numbered list, so forth and so on. And with any of this, you just want to make sure you save it periodically. Whoops, I guess I have too many characters on that particular document, but I can go through here and save it, and it'll be committed to as part of the actual project. All right, let me restart this real quick. So the next skill I want to show you guys is the status reporting. So if I go to the status tab here, in PPM 360, we have a status reporting module. And this basically will show what the current status is of the project, has some roll-up fields for how many active issues, how many active risk, how many active change requests. And in the middle here would be your narrative, the weekly, bi-weekly, monthly status report narrative that you want to capture. And if you want to do this manually, you can go into here, click on a new status report. I'm just going to discard changes from that business case. And then you can fill out this form to kind of capture the narrative for that particular reporting period. And with Proji, you could also do something similar here, but it kind of walks you through asking you questions about the last reporting period. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to create a new status report. Now, excuse me, if you had prior status reports, you could also pick them from this drop down, or if you leave it on new, you can just tell it you want to create a brand new status report. And I can tell what the reporting date's going to be. So I'm going to say tomorrow's Friday. So let's say it's as of May 8th. And then I have my narrative. So what do we accomplish this week? Next question will be, what are we working on next? And then also any comments, issues. Now with this, you can ask Proji to go ahead and analyze the project. What progress have we made? What are some of the things that have been completed recently? Yada, yada, yada. And it can go ahead and just generate what that, in this case, accomplishments were for the last reporting period. You can also just type in, if you want to write it yourself. But here you can see it goes through, it starts writing up what those accomplishments are. This is a little wordy for my taste, but again, you can kind of see as it goes through and tries to write that for you. Now you can say use this. You could also edit it, start over, which will just basically have it recreate another iteration of that. I'm just going to say I want to use this. And then here I can go in, I could edit that if I want, or I can just click on next. Now it'll be next steps. So again, I'll tell it to generate the next steps as well. Just going to tell it to use this. And then last but not least, do we have any comments or issues? So for this, it doesn't make a suggestion for this. You would just go ahead and enter in whatever you want. So no issues during this period. You could also just leave it blank if you want. And then here we have our health indicators. Now in my demo environment here, most of the health indicators are just manual toggles that the project manager can select. So this will show you what the current values are. And then they can go in, they could change these. If these are driven by formulas and calculations, they won't show up here because it'll be using other data, metadata related to the project and use those formulas to calculate what the value is. But in this case, I'm just going to go through here. I'm going to say schedules at risk or scopes at risk. And then who do I want to submit this to? So you can have this sent via email to whoever the person is that you want to select here. We could also make this a multi-select, so if you want to send it to a group of people or several individuals. And then last but not least, we want to save the status report. And of course, I get an error because it's a demo. All right, let me skip this. Let me try something again. Let me restart it. I'm not sure what it's complaining about, but it looks like it's related to an earlier demo I did. All right, let me pick a different reporting date. Do next week. So when we're doing this search, it is searching against your Active Directory. So whatever returns it sees, you can then pick the resource that you want to send the status report to. Again, depending on your environment and how it's set up, this might be an email notification. It could also be a Teams notification. So really depending on how you guys want to deliver it. So there you go. It saved it successfully. And then it's asking you, do you want to create a formal status report document? So this is an example where we can have the agent create an actual document. In this case, it's going to be a Word document, but it could also be maybe a PowerPoint deck, depending on what it is, what formats you want to see, and what else you want to look at. So once I generate the status report, I can click here to go ahead and download it. And it's going to open it up here. I'll have to share that window for you guys. So just give me a second. So this is an example of it creating a Word document. And includes all that information. And then depending on what else you would want in your status report. So here's a good example of it. It's including items that we wrote to the risk log earlier. So they're automatically added here. Same thing with issues, changes. But you could also add other sections like, what are the tasks that are due next week? Or what are the upcoming milestones for this project? What are the milestones we've completed for this project? We can customize it depending on exactly what it is that you would want to see. All right. So let me go back here. All right. So that's pretty much Proji as it stands right now. Again, it's an add-on to PPM 360. It doesn't necessarily work with out-of-the-box planner because it really wants to leverage a lot of the other capabilities that PPM 360 adds to planner. Now, another feature that I haven't demoed yet, another skill, is the schedule creation. This project already has a schedule, so we're not going to use this project. So let me close this and I'm going to go back. What I'm going to do is open up a project that doesn't have a schedule yet. So let me go into this guy. And similar setup that you saw earlier, I've already put some information on the project charter, so it kind of has an idea what the scope is, what the description is, what objectives are. But if we go to the task list here, you can see the schedule is currently blank. Now, obviously, with PPM 360, we have schedule templates and things like that based on whatever project type you might have. So a lot of times the schedule is already going to be populated. But with Proji, you can have it create a new schedule from scratch. And it'll look at the overall context, what's the objectives of the project and what information's in the model related to building schedules related to that kind of project. So if I say schedule creation, it's then asking me here, do you have a particular start date? Do you need to finish by a certain date? Let it know what the parameters are, and then it'll go ahead and build the schedule itself. So I could go into here and say, we need to finish by the end of the year. So it's now reading the overall context of the project. It's looking at its own knowledge within the AI model, and then based on the description of the project, based on what it knows would typically need to be done for that kind of project or that project type, it's now going to go ahead and generate the tasks, the dependencies, the summary tasks, the groupings. So as you can see over here, it's starting to populate that information. It's grouping them together into different summary tasks, and then it's going to apply project dependencies. Now, is it going to be the perfect schedule? No, it's obviously not. The project manager should still review this, make modifications to it, and then build it out depending on how they feel the project may need to be modified. So if I expand any of these, you can kind of see the overall structure it gave. Some of these are pretty, standard things you would typically see. But as you look into here, like for example, custom fields and lookup tables, this is a migration of Project Online to Project Server. That's actually a very important piece of migrating that. So it did see that in the context of the project, what type of project it is, what are the products that are involved in this particular project, what are some of the data elements in that particular product. So it went in, it added, custom fields, lookup tables, timesheets, integrations, things like that. Now you can go through here and obviously modify this depending on, what you feel. Also, you can see the dependencies have been set up. So in this case, dependencies are pretty basic. It's just linking finish to start between all these tasks, but you can then go in here and modify these as well, depending on, what you know of the project and what you feel. All right. So I did get an error saying it didn't create dependencies, but I do see the dependencies, so I'm not sure exactly what it was complaining about there. So that's an example where it's creating the project or project schedule from scratch based on what it knows of the project and then what it knows from the AI model about projects of this type. All right. All right. What questions do you guys have, if any?
Hey Neil, we did have one question in the chat.
Okay.
If you have a project plan template, would it follow that plan?
It would. So the way we do it in PPM 360 is when you're creating the project, you typically will select a project type, which would include your schedule template, but it would also include things like, what phases, stages, gate approvals does that project have to go through. Could also include other things in a project type, but primarily it'll use that. Now, for schedule creation, if it detects that a template's already been applied, it'll ask you, are you sure you want me to, delete that template and recreate a new schedule, or do you want me to just stop and not do anything? It's not going to modify the template. Um, that's not part of that particular skill at this time.
Hey Neil,
And
does it have the capability to look at other project schedules within your instance of PPM 360 and kind of use that to learn to update the model?
it will, yeah. We don't have that implemented currently, but that's on the roadmap.
Okay.
The other thing we're going to be doing too is have the agent work more at the portfolio level instead of individual project level. That's
Yeah,
also on the roadmap. So
that
you might be
sounds
able to
good.
go in, for example, if I drill down here, go into a particular portfolio, and I might want it to analyze all the project schedules in that portfolio and create either a list of recommendations or action items related to that. So that's
Yeah.
coming. It's not part of it yet, but it will be here.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, by portfolio makes good sense.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions? Going once?
There's a couple other ones in the chat. Let me see. Can Proji be used with other project management tools?
No, not currently. So it's primarily Planner, the Microsoft platform. It's Planner with our PPM 360 solution.
And then Brianna asked, can we see how risks could be flagged within the planner?
You mean in the schedule itself? I think that's what you mean. It doesn't
Yes.
do
Yeah.
that currently. Planner actually doesn't do that either. Now, what we're doing here out of the box is we are writing to the risk log. Actually, I opened up the wrong project, but we're writing it to the risk log, which basically is right here. But we're not creating those risks on the schedule. Really depends on your process. We do have some customers that do that. So, for example, if I open up the form here, we have a function here to convert the risk to be an issue. And what that does is it moves the risk onto the issue log. But you could also say, the risk is now in an active state. Add my mitigation or contingency plan task to my project schedule automatically. We could actually do that. We could actually do that without needing to do it via Proji, although you could have it, through Proji as well. Typically, what's going to happen is it gets written to the risk log, and then depending if the risk is now actually happening, we want to manage that. We have some mitigation or contingency task we want to add to the schedule, then through automation, we can add that. I hope that answers your question. I think that's what you meant. Any other questions?
If you do an email scan and then do a subsequent email scan, will Proji ignore the previously dealt with emails?
It's supposed to, yeah. It may not. I mean, depending, it may be an additional email from a conversation, conversation thread. You might see something that looks similar, but it's flagging something that's a little bit different because a newer email came in. But yeah, it should ignore things that are already logged. All right. All right, I'll hand it back to you, Charlotte.